I've been traveling with this car for a month now, and I feel like if something catastrophic would fail, it would have happened by now. Since I bought the car, it's been through a full nut and bolt restoration, and every single thing on the car, mechanical and bodywork, has been taken down to the last bolt and put back together. The engine was rebored for oversized pistons and assembled back together using mostly original parts apart from exhaust valves and of course bearings and gaskets. And since the full assembly, these have now done just past 1400 miles, and I'm saying miles because the car is right-hand drive, so the odometer is obviously imperial. And when I bought the car and drove it back to the garage I was going to do the restoration, the odometer just rolled over 100,000 miles down to zero. So it's just a simple way of keeping track of what kind of mileage I've done with the car. And apart from the engine, which was my absolutely first time doing a full engine rebuild, I also did the gearbox and the axles, which also was a first time experience for me. And I did of course follow the book on those, but it is kind of nerve-wracking when it's your first time driving those first 100 miles, just waiting to see if something will happen. I've done 1400 miles going through every valley and over every single mountain pass I could find to give it a proper shakedown. But now that I've straight up lived and traveled out of this for about 30 days, going through a somewhat rough country, how is it actually to live with a 51-year-old Land Rover? And which parts of this setup actually works, what does not work, and what needs to change as soon as possible? First off is the heating situation, because the entire body of the car is just thin alloy plates, so this is not retaining heat at all. But I did change out the original heater to a aftermarket Eberspacher one, so this is actually fairly comfortable and warm whilst I'm driving. But it's not like I'm driving all the time. To be fair, it's actually a rarity that I'm driving, and most of my time is spent being outside and doing whatever I feel like in a new location. But traveling in Norway sometimes is actually kind of hard to just exist. So I truly need to be able to be inside of the car fully sheltered from the weather, and I also need to be able to be in there to work. So I try to combine those two and be inside of the car when the weather is shitty and do some actual work on my laptop. And when I'm in there trying to work, I think I'm allowed some sort of comfort, because the temperature this night was about 2 degrees plus. So whilst sipping my morning coffee with this view, I ordered a diesel heater so that when I'm stationary and not actively traveling, I'll still be able to be comfortable without starting the car. And from the factory, this car is already perfectly set up for that, because underneath the passenger seat there's a storage box, and the entire seat box is made out of aluminium, meaning it's a safe and easy place to install a diesel heater. And that storage box is really suited for the installation because the floor is just a thin aluminium plate, meaning I can install it perfectly flat with the exhaust going through the floor without risking burning down the whole car. And that brings us to the second thing on the setup that isn't really functional as a permanent solution. Because atop the roof rack I do have 200 watts of solar, which is perfectly fine, at least this part of the year. But this panel is also charging a really small battery bank, which has been perfectly fine up until now. And the small battery bank has been fine because the solar panels are always charging something, even when it's overcast like now. But I haven't needed much power for a lot of things. I really only need to charge my laptop, my cameras, some lighting, a headlamp and other tiny electrical items, none of which are drawing much power. But now with a diesel heater added to the equation, I do need more power, not just to be able to run it for a long time, but it draws a lot of power during the startup phase due to the glow plug, and I'm kind of certain that the one I have won't even be able to turn it on. So more electrical power is on the list of things I need to fix, but as of now, all of these items are just comfort items. But as I head north and winter heads south, it's going to become necessary. But everything listed so far is just concerning how it is to live with this car when it's parked. But how is it actually to drive? And to truly start at the beginning of the drive, this is not a car you just turn on and drive off straight away. It's an old engine with a carburetor, so it needs to heat up for a bit before it becomes efficient and comfortable to drive as well. And as soon as it's kind of warm like now, I can turn off the choke. But no matter what kind of car I drive, I always let it heat up for a bit before driving off for a variety of reasons. But it's not rocket science understanding that warm oil is a better lubricant than cold syrup, especially in an old car like this with mineral oil. Something else worth giving a second thought before traveling with a car like this is obviously safety. For example, it does have a handbrake, but I do not trust it at all, even though I was the one that built the car. And I have seen with my own eyes a series parked on a steep hill with the car in gear and the handbrake pulled up, roll away and crash into a concrete wall. Probably due to a poor handbrake and low compression, which this car does not have a problem with. But I'm not going to figure out how that feels if it happened to a car I care about, so I'm usually blocking the wheels or at least pulling it into low range if I'm parking on a hill like this. And on the note of safety, this is not a place you'd like to be if you ever crash, because there's no airbags, no crumple zones, no ABS. There is seat belts, but hardly any. And all of the things you are able to hit if you crash are metal or glass. And in a country full of remote and dark roads full of big animals like elks, I try to remind myself that it's not necessary to keep on driving if the visibility is poor. And sometimes it's smart to plan and get to a camp like this whilst it's still light outside. And the original setup is 10-inch drums front and back, meaning a modern car might be able to stop and swerve, whilst this will plow through. But don't be fooled by every expert online saying you can never drive a stock car like this in normal traffic, because you can do that perfectly fine. But nevertheless, when I'm in this, my driving style is a lot more defensive than what it would be in a normal car, and I try to remind myself to get to camp early and not take any unnecessary risks in a car like this. And something completely different worth mentioning with this is efficiency, or lack thereof. The fuel tank is underneath the driver's seat, holding about 45 liters of petrol, plus maybe 5 liters if I fill the filler neck all the way to the rim. And a car like this will give you anything between 1 and 2 liters per 10 kilometer, all depending on surface, elevation, temperature, incline, decline, load, and a million different factors. And for mixed use, I think I'm using about 1.3 liters per 10 kilometer, fully loaded as it is with all-terrain tires. So it's not exactly a long-range highway cruiser, but it's not terrible. But every now and then you want to drive into a remote location like this and stay there for a while. So in addition to having 50 liters of petrol underneath the seat, I'm able to have 20, 40, 60 liters of petrol plus 20 liters of diesel for the heater. But that's the same weight as a full-grown man up on the roof, so I never carry anything up there unless I have to, or if it just makes sense. Like right now, because I refueled 2 hours before reaching a mountain pass. I did the mountain pass, I drove to this remote location, and I'm driving from here to a different remote location without the ability to refuel in about a week. And in the door storage, I do have lead additives and a filler spout. And the jerry can holds 20 liters, meaning I need 20 ml of this. And the reason using lead is because the engine was designed running on leaded petrol, and the exhaust valves, which is brand new and the seats are left, does not like running on unleaded petrol like this. But there is modifications you can do to the engine to run unleaded, where you install a hardened seat for the exhaust valve. But since I built the car on a budget, I did not do that. However, I know that I lapped the seats for the exhaust valves to perfection, meaning the next time I take the head off the engine, I can see if the hardened seats are worth it, or if the cheaper option of running modern fuel with lead is just as good. And yes, of course, I did color match the jerry cans to the car. I'm not an animal. And for now, this fuel system works perfectly fine, but I did install all of them laying flat because I didn't want to add any extra height to the car. But it's not like I'll park in a parking garage anytime soon either way. So I think I'll install them vertically in some sort of rack to get the most out of the square space up there. Before the series, the last time I had a petrol car was a Alfa Romeo 916 Spider. which was fairly modern in comparison to this. But old and hot running petrol engines like these are a bit more interesting if something goes wrong. So there's not a single piece in the fuel system from the fuel tank all the way to the internals of the carburetor that hasn't been replaced with good brand new quality parts. And this is also one of the cars you carry a fire extinguisher, and ironically without just trying to look like a race car driver. And to summarize all of that, the car itself is working perfectly fine, meaning that the guy who built the car must have done an immaculate job. And the camping setup works perfectly fine, but it needs some upgrades. And there's also the safety aspect of traveling with this, but it's kind of like hiking a steep mountain. F around and find out. If you're calm, careful, collective, it's not really dangerous using this car. It's not safe, but it's not dangerous. When you're building a car, first and foremost, to travel in cold ass countries like the Nordics, there's a couple of things which is really easy to forget about. And with this car, in this climate, it's really easy to only focus on getting the driver's compartment warm. But every now and then, Norway is actually warm. And whilst cruising along, the Land Rover series does have these air flaps, allowing a lot of air to blow in your face whilst driving. But my car is the top notch of what you could get from the factory as extra equipment, like this safari roof or tropical roof. And this is an original pamphlet from when you could buy these cars brand new in 1974. And there's a ton of different options between soft top, hard top with windows, station wagon with sliding windows, single cab, double cab, and whatnot. And all of them are actually the same car, apart from the white section, which you can just lift off and replace with a solid roof, solid sides without windows, fixed windows, sliding windows, short roof with a back wall if you want to pick up, and so on. And this is considered to be a station wagon with sliding windows, alpine windows, rare safari windows, and best of all, the double skin roof. But whilst a lot of old cars has double skin roof for insulation, this actually serves a purpose as well. If you imagine the wing of an aeroplane, the wind hitting the front of this will take the shortest route underneath or above the car. And the shortest route is actually up against the windshield and in between the two layers of the roof. And instead of just flowing over the car, there's air flaps in the roof allowing that to be rammed inside of the car instead. And I was pleasantly surprised by how well this actually functions, as slow as 20 kilometers an hour. And of course a lot more if you're going faster, because it's brutally warm inside of every single classic car I've been in on a hot summer day. And of course you can open up the windows, but if you're driving on the highway or it's raining, this might be annoying. And it's the same situation with these, because yes, you get a lot of wind, but you also get a lot of rain if it's pouring down and you're cruising down the road. But the ones on the roof, you don't. And these vents actually do serve a purpose if you're sleeping inside of the car as well, because if it's windy outside, there's always some wind passing through them. And when I'm going to run a diesel heater inside of this tiny compartment, these are a necessity, because if you just run the heater with everything closed, the air inside gets really dry. But if it's running and these are open, I can get a mix of fresh air and warm air. There's a lot of slate mines in this area, and it's absolutely perfect to level out the car so I can have a flat bed. We also have wild reindeer in this area. Norway does have places with semi-farmed animals, but these antlers are from the real deal. But it's quite some time since this animal passed, because this is quite weathered and it's actually starting to look like wood. I've been wild camping for a lot of days now, and this may not look like it, but it's actually a campground. And it even has a toilet. And when a campground looks like this, I'm not complaining. And I'm also the only person up here. But it's not really shocking that I'm the only one up here, because the last few days has been quite cold and windy. And because of that, I've also put off some service work on this until I'm back down from the mountains again, down in a warm valley. And that is also something important with traveling in an old car like this, because there's no sensors or warnings letting you know that something is off. So when I get back down from the mountains, I'll check the oil levels on the gearbox, transfer case and overdrive, because it's about time. And I also reset the clearances on the valves, because I think it's about time to do that as well. But apart from just staying afloat with all of the different things you need to check every now and then, the car feels pretty much low maintenance. And it's not that weird, because it's not that much moving parts on this. And I think that's month 1 check. So now I'll just have to see how long I can stay on this wave with everything being fresh and fully restored, because that will change down the road.